Hello, and welcome back to Are You Experienced, a podcast all about the business of experiences. I'm Joe Timson. I'm the founder of Covea, a live experience analytics company, and I am working my way across the experience economy, interviewing important people about their careers, their businesses, and their points of view on this vast and growing space. This episode is our first trip across the pond, and I'm delighted to be speaking to Matt Ferguson. He's Chief Innovation Officer at Storyland Studios. It doesn't get more experiential in the world of theme parks, and we go deep on just how influential that sector's been on the wider experience economy, but also how Disney's principle of starting with story can make experience strategy and decision-making much easier in any sector. Hope you enjoy. On with the show. Matt, hello. Welcome to Are You Experienced?
Hey, Joe. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and doing this. Really do appreciate you taking the time, and really excited as well to talk about another part of the industry that I'm certainly not that familiar with, which is the incredible world of theme parks and themed attractions. But before we start, we're going to go through your career, which has been a really fascinating journey through themed entertainment and marketing, and more recently into kind of actually designing some of the parks that you started out in. But first of all, I am really fascinated to hear more about something that is quite alien to British people like me, which is your college football career, because it was kind of a stellar college football career that you had. So tell us a bit about that.
Man, well, you're going way back now. Wow. Yeah, I think a lot of my UK and European friends don't quite understand the scale of college football in the US, but it's the number 2 sport in the US, second only to the NFL. So it's more popular than the NBA, National Hockey League, baseball, you name it. And so it's a religion to some people. Some people take it way too seriously. But yeah, I had the opportunity to play at Florida State University, the Seminoles of Florida State. And for those that know college football, that's one of the great dynasties in the sport, and had the opportunity to play for Coach Bobby Bowden, who was one of the great all-time great coaches as well. So had an opportunity to be a part of a really great program. And actually that experience had just so many life lessons that I still draw from today, whether it's how to lead people, whether it's how to get along with people that are different than you, how to orchestrate something together that's very complex, push through things when you don't feel like pushing through things. So yeah, it was definitely a formative experience early in my life.
Amazing, yeah. And just to give people a sense of the scale, we're talking about some of the biggest stadia in the world, right? For college football, we're like 100,000 seat stadiums and all this craziness.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. Yeah, I haven't been able to match that rush of being able to run out there in a stadium like that with all of the crowd cheering really since, but that's okay. I get my rushes in other ways in creating fun experiences for people.
Amazing. I mean, for what it's worth, I played rugby at university, and we got excited about playing in front of a crowd of about 4,000 people. That was our big game, was 4,000 people.
I love watching rugby. I watched the Netflix series about the Six Nations, and I thought, you know what, if I grew up in the UK, that would probably be my sport. I love it.
I think so. That's the natural cousin of American football, for sure.
Yeah,
I call it American football, obviously.
I think it's even more brutal, even more. You have to be even tougher, I think, to play rugby.
Yeah, well, no pads, but I think that just makes people run faster into each other having pads on. So it's
that's true.
Much of a muchness. Cool. Well, I imagine that kind of experience can only carry forward into the rest of your career. So talk us through it then. So you leave college and then you immediately start at Disney, right?
Yeah, actually, before Disney, I was at an advertising agency for a few years, working on travel and tourism things. I worked on Asheville tourism, Asheville is one of the most popular mountain city destinations in the eastern U.S., and then an attraction called Biltmore Estate, which is the closest thing America has to a castle. It's the Vanderbilt family, one of the sort of barons of the late 1900 or 1800s, early 1900s, built this 250 room French chateau, basically in the countryside of the North Carolina mountains, and
Wow.
it's become a major tourist attraction, the most visited winery in America, and shops, hotels, etc. on property. So I had the opportunity to work on that, and that's what helped me get the job at Disney.
And so you talk us through your career then from there, because it's obviously you got a really good grounding at Disney, but just walk us through step by step and the sort of the key moments, if you like, that have shaped how you think about experiences.
Yeah. So the first thing that I had the opportunity to work on at Disney was the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex. And not everybody knows it, but Disney has a massive sports complex on property where the NBA played during COVID. They have a big baseball stadium, soccer and football fields, the whole works. And the reason it was created was to draw amateur tournaments there, so that when kids come and play in their national championship of their sport, they're bringing their parents and their sisters and brothers along with them, and hopefully staying in Disney resorts. So I got to be on the launch team for that, which was great, especially for a sports guy. And I think my sports background helped me get that opportunity. And yeah, it was really cool to be a part of something brand new like that. And then I moved on to advertising and marketing, and for the Walt Disney World brand, marketing
Mm.
Disney as a vacation destination to the domestic audience. And then part of my responsibility in that was Disney resorts. And then I was on a team that had the opportunity to work on the brand architecture for Walt Disney World as a destination, because we had sort of found ourselves with four theme parks and all these resorts and a entertainment district and all this kind of stuff. Um, and we thought of ourselves as the most magical place on earth, but what do all of these components mean underneath it? And so I got to be a part of a team that was really trying to figure out what are the stories of all of those component parts underneath it, and creating a brand architecture that consumers could understand. So that was really cool to be a part of. And then we launched so many things while I was there. It was really like my graduate school experience. I was in my 20s, probably given way more responsibility than I should have been given. But as a result of being a part of that domestic advertising and marketing team, obviously the new things we were launching became really important messages in that national effort. So Animal Kingdom opened when I was there. We worked on the
Wow.
Millennium Celebration while I was there, marketing Disney as the place to be for the Millennium Celebration. So it couldn't have been a better time to be at Disney, and it was just such a crucible of learning when I was there.
Yeah, amazing. Were you there for the Millennium?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty wild. Celebrate the
Yeah,
future
amazing.
hand in hand was our line.
Very good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy to think back to the turn of the century and how much of a big deal that was. It was sort of spoken about for 20 years up to that
Yeah.
point, and then kind of not spoken about again since.
Yeah, we didn't.
So it was,
We,
it was
we
a
thought
shame.
all the computers might crash that night, and all the
Yeah,
lights
yeah.
would go out.
Planes dropping from the sky,
Yeah,
all that jazz. Yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, we're going to dive into the brand side of it, and your kind of experience with that, because I'm really fascinated by that. We're going to dive into that later as our sort of main topic. Let's kind of jump forward then. So you leave Disney and you kind of go even more into that sort of brand strategy, brand management world, right?
yes. So I actually got a call from the agency that I worked with before I joined Disney, and it was an opportunity to come back, and I saw it as a chance to be a part of the leadership of the company, and that really turned out to be the case. And our agency had a specialty in places and destinations, so I got to continue to work on that kind of thing. I worked on Pinehurst, which is sort of our St. Andrews, our mecca of golf in America.
Mm.
The Grove Park Inn, which is a historic resort, as well as a number of Six Flags parks that were a part of the Paramount Parks kind of group at that point. So Carowinds in North Carolina, Canada's Wonderland, King's Dominion, King's Island, California's Great America. So I didn't have to depart from the theme park business. But the cool thing about that experience was, uh, at Disney, I really enjoyed working with the Imagineers on the new experiences that were coming, and got an early peek at what we were creating. And then we worked together to develop the story for what those things would be. And then
Mm,
working in the agency, a lot of times when a brand would come to us and say, hey, you guys have helped us create this great brand. What does that look like in the spaces? And so along the way, I started getting into spatial design just by default. A
mm,
restaurant chain would say, hey, what does this new brand look like in our interiors and with our packaging and with our signage?
mm,
A resort we might work with would say, hey, what does this look like in the interior of our resort, or in a mobile marketing vehicle that might drive around and advertise. So yeah, I sort of got into spatial that way. And so then I ended up meeting Mel McGowan, one of the founders of Storyland. And we kind of hit it off over our mutual Disney background. And then I met his brother, Pete, his co-founder, and we sort of hit it off. And another thing that happened at that time, uh, I, I had a partnership in a small hotel here in the Smoky Mountains where I'm sitting right now, and had the chance to brand that and design that as well, and just really enjoyed that whole process. I think Mel and Peter saw that, that I did that, and then COVID hit, and we all realized, hey, we could work from anywhere. And so that's really that became the catalyst to me joining up with Storyland 5 years ago, late this time in 2020.
that's really interesting. COVID feels like that would be a seismic, kind of catastrophe, frankly, in the kind of industry you're in. But it sounds like it was almost. So you signed up during COVID with Storyland, or you were already in there and then COVID hit?
Yeah, it was late 2020, so it was still
Right,
very much in the
right in the
throes.
thick of it.
So yeah,
Wow.
I
So
mean,
that's
Disneyland was still shut down. Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
that's a hell of a time to jump
it was. Yeah,
both feet into theme parks, right?
it was. But you know, Storyland was growing at that point because we do have a sort of digital component of what we do. And a lot of the spatial things you work on have a long horizon. So it's not like we're going
Yeah,
to shut down the whole project because this pandemic is here. So
yeah,
any sort of design things that had been started, we're still
yeah,
going.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
obviously there were
So
some clients that pulled back during that time, but uh,
yeah,
yeah, they
but the
they actually
belief was that it
enjoy
was
growth.
all going to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. That's great. And so, okay. So, Storyland. Tell for those that haven't heard of Storyland, and obviously a huge name in the industry, but give us an explanation of the work that you do at Storyland, and obviously as your role as Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah. Well, Storyland Studios is essentially a group of former Disney Imagineers and Universal creatives that are now for hire for other organizations to create experiences. And we have this big and lofty vision to create experiences that lift the spirit. That's sort of the lens through which we look at the world, and it's actually a filter that determines what kinds of clients that we would take on. So anything we do take on has to make a positive mark on the world, has to lift the spirit in one way or another. And our services range from master planning. Mel, our one of our founders that hopefully you'll be talking to on the podcast, really cut his teeth at the Disney organization on the West Coast when they were doing the major expansion in Anaheim, adding downtown Disney and the Grand Californian Hotel. And so Mel is a master planner by training, and we are a licensed architecture firm. We have Jeff Dameron, who is a legend in the industry and has worked on all kinds of Disney and Universal projects. Landscape architecture is a practice that we have, show set design. But essentially, an organization can come to us to design any experience that they might want, from a massive theme park multi-day destination to, I've worked on something as small as a tattoo studio for a company that wanted to become the first franchise tattoo studio and wanted to elevate what the idea of what a
Wow.
place could be that you get your tattoos. Experience design is the core of what we do.
Yeah, fascinating. And so you've talked a lot about there about the kind of the spatial element of design, but presumably there's like a sort of a time or a flow component to that as well, right? So like not just the space, but how people move through that space
Yes,
as well as that
absolutely.
in scope.
Yeah, there are time tested practices for how you manage the flow of people, how you create capacity. Uh, you have something that's called a design day, where uh, you figure out what is the maximum number of people that we might have to accommodate on a particular day in the year, and you make sure that there are attractions, places for people to go that can absorb that many people, so that the
Mm,
experience is still good. Obviously, you will have days that will have relatively long queues, but then how do we entertain people while they're in the queue?
mm,
Some of the work that we've done for the major theme park companies have to do with updating the queue experience and making that more interactive, more
yeah.
fun. But for sure, there's a lot of spreadsheet math behind the pretty pictures that we draw.
Yeah, for sure. We had on the first episode of this, we had Heather McGill, who's one of our advisors. She ran guest experience at London 2012 Olympics. She consults on all these Olympics and mega events, and she was saying that, I mean, she learnt a huge amount of how to manage vast numbers of people from the theme park industry. So, a lot of the stuff they did at London 2012 was the first time that they'd kind of thought about guest experience in that kind of way. It was really mainly a kind of something built for broadcast, right? The Olympics, and but for the first time they were sort of managing that on the ground with a kind of a dedicated team for managing guest experience. And they said all of that stuff about how to move a crowd with sound and using entertainment like buskers and things like that to slow people down or speed people up.
Yeah, there are ways to move people without shouting at them. You just create subtle landmarks for them to go to.
Yeah,
For example,
yeah,
Walt Disney talked about he he would rather lead his dog around the house with a hot dog than to whack it with a newspaper if it went in the wrong direction. And so he always created these icons at the center of the park, like the castle. That w- or the castle was actually the only one he had the opportunity to work on, but uh, he called it a weenie. It was like a hot dog for the dog. That everybody wants to go toward the castle, and then once you're at that central hub, you then realize, oh, I can go to Adventureland, I can go to
yeah.
Tomorrowland, I can go to Fantasyland. Yeah, there are so many ways you can move people subtly without blaring signage and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fascinating. So, okay, we've jumped ahead a little bit there, but tell us about your role specifically then at Storyland. So, Chief Innovation Officer. What does that mean in the context of experience design?
Yeah, for the last 5 years, I've served as Chief Innovation Officer at Storyland, and I I am breaking some news on this podcast, actually, that I am continuing with Storyland in a more fractional role, but I'm going back to my roots of branding and marketing and starting up my own branding and marketing firm called Ever After Group. So I can talk about that later. But for now, yeah, let me
Yeah.
tell you what I've been up to as Chief
Well,
Innovation
exclusive. You
Officer.
heard it here
Yeah,
first, guys.
exclusive.
But
You've
yeah,
heard it
well,
here. Um, but yeah, I'd like to say that the title Chief Innovation Officer is just vague enough that I can do a lot of things. I've always been sort of a hybrid between creativity and strategy. And innovation is a word that sort of encompasses those two sides of the brain. But with the kind of experiences we work on with at Storyland, every one of them is a completely new thing. There's something totally different than anything else that exists in the world. So by definition, we are bringing innovation whenever we deliver a project, but that vague title has allowed me to serve in a variety of roles. Obviously, serving in the C-suite of the company, helping set the direction. Uh, for a while, I oversaw a group of our client leaders that we called producers or executive producers. We now call them project directors. Uh, I've led the branding and marketing for the company to make us famous and help people understand who we are. And then serving as kind of principal in charge on major client relationships. We like to have one of us senior leaders on each of our major client relationships. So, Mel has some that he's overseeing. Ben has some that he oversees,
Mm.
and I have some that I oversee as well. And then all of us are kind of tapped with working our relationship network to bring in new opportunities to the company. And those last two things, the senior client relationships and business development, are what I'll continue to do with
Wow.
Storyland. So I'll step away from all the other leadership duties. And those are my favorite things to do anyway. So that uh, those things probably took up 25 to 30% of my time. And so I'll continue to do that, but with the remaining 70 to 75%, I'll be starting up my branding and marketing consultancy. But I'd be happy to highlight the projects that I'm involved
Y-
in and
yeah, please do. Yeah, yeah,
continue to be
yeah,
involved in. Maybe I can just throw a few out there and you can just probe a bit on ones that you might
yeah.
want to learn
Sure.
more. But one of the fun ones that we're getting ready to open up a next phase on is Trilith in Georgia. And Trilith is a couple of things. It is a really cool new urbanist walkable town that was built from scratch, and it's the busiest movie studio in North America. Now busier than
Uh,
Warner Brothers studio. It's where three of the top 10 movies of all time have been filmed. The majority of the Marvel movies since Ant-Man. uh, the next phase that we're working on there at Trilith is called Trilith Live, where we're working on a whole project that includes a multiplex cinema as well as
mm,
two live studio audience sound stages. And our team is doing the area development and landscape architecture around the complex to connect it to the downtown and to create a really cool hangout area for the residents of Trilith, for those that might come to Trilith to be in the studio audience of, say, a Family Feud, and then kind of creating a flow with downtown. So that's an exciting project that opens up in first quarter of 26, and we're excited to
so
see that.
yeah, so when you say residents of Trilith, so there are people who actually live there in the
Yes.
in the
Yeah,
town.
there's single family homes. There are apartments, condominiums, and it's like it looks like a small town that uh, cropped up years ago and developed over time, but it's really happened over the last, I don't know, 7 years or so. So
That's
it's
incredible. It's
yeah.
almost reminds me of some of these big giga projects that's coming out of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. They're building these kind of huge purpose built kind of themed worlds almost where it's kind of
Yes.
that's fascinating that that's happening
Yeah, we've been
in the
involved
States
in
still
some
as
of
well.
those as well. Uh,
Yeah.
and so that's Trilith. We're working on Liberty Land USA, which is a park around American history in South Dakota near Mount Rushmore. If
Hmm.
you've ever been to Mount Rushmore, you realize there's not a whole lot to do beyond Mount Rushmore in that area. So we're creating kind of that day 2, day 3, day 4, and beyond
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience there. And so I haven't been the lead on that project, but I've spoken into the branding, the PR, kind of the things that I do. Um,
Mm.
we're working on another kind of ground up place called Trinity, Florida, that is an 800-acre complex that it's basically 3 times the size of Disney Springs, and it's all centered around sports. So it's kind of like Disney Springs times the wide world of sports that I worked on.
Mm.
Uh, we we have a client, an ongoing client called Unclaimed Baggage Center, which is in Alabama, and one of the most popular tourist attractions in Alabama, and they basically have an exclusive contract with the airlines where if they can, if someone's luggage gets lost and they're unable to locate that person and that person gets reimbursed for their lost luggage, they don't know where to send all these remaining pieces of luggage. So they throw it into a semi truck and they send it down to Unclaimed Baggage Center. And they have this incredible, huge retail destination. And if you think about when people go on vacation, they are bringing their nicest stuff and they're shopping for new stuff. So they literally
Yeah.
pull out brand new, like, uh, Gucci bags that somebody just bought
Yeah.
on vacation and stuff. And so you can find some incredible deals down there. They actually have a National Geographic series out right now about like
Right.
the
I'm
oddities and
sure I've
things.
seen like a kind of blind auction type thing with lost luggage as well. You know, remember like Storage Wars, but
Yeah,
I've seen one
yeah,
of those, I'm sure, for lost luggage where it's like they're kind of
yeah. It's a
bidding
little
on
different
bags
than
and
that.
something.
Yeah, it's a little different than that in that they don't like auction off a piece of luggage that hasn't been
Yeah.
opened yet. They they open the luggage. If there are electronics in there, they're able to wipe the
Yeah.
electronics and restart them. They have jewelry experts
Wow.
that can appraise the value of jewelry and sell it for a big discount. And I mean, it's a pretty cool place. And so over the years, we've helped them with store design, with little Instagrammable moments. We even created a
Yeah.
mobile marketing vehicle for them. And
Wow.
so we work on kind of these big projects, but we also work on things that are smaller. I mean, recently a small destination in the U.S., Burn Opelika, Alabama, hired us to create an 800 square foot uh, interactive visitor center at their Chamber of Commerce building, and
Mm.
it's become an attraction in the area. But it's we do things like that, or like the tattoo studio that I talked about.
Yeah.
We've been able to work with a wonderful children's hospital in Oklahoma City on Route 66 and created a themed experience out of it for these kids who are really going through a tough time to be able to have moments of joy. So there's quite a
Yeah.
variety of stuff that we get to work on.
That's a huge variety. That's unbelievable. And so I suppose the common thread there is this idea of an experience being, a narrative or a storytelling that unfolds spatially and temporally, right? So
That's it.
it
Yeah,
unfolds across the space and through and across a timeline, which is, fundamentally it's an extra dimension, right? That you have to play with versus something like film or something else. So I'd love to dig deeper into that and particularly tie it back to your expertise, and I'm kind of finding my feet in the experiential world, but I've come from the world of media and advertising and that kind of side of the industry. So I'm really interested in that tension that exists in any kind of channel, which is this tension between long and short term goals and this idea of building brands with experiences. And so you mentioned when you were at Disney about managing the overall brand, but then within that, you've got all of these different, the parks within that represent brands. And then presumably within those parks, you've got branded rides and IP led experiences within that, all of which have a kind of, they're trying to get some of that Disney magic rubbed off on them to sort of to grow as brands. But at the same time, you're kind of trying to drive ticket sales and short term revenue. So I suppose my question is, how do you think about that? How do you see experiences as a brand building channel?
yeah, and I think the lesson in there is if you can start with story first, that informs a lot of decisions, a lot of design decisions, and a lot of strategic decisions. And the reason why that works so well, the reason why Disney has been able to create these biggest human magnets in the world, or human mousetraps, as my buddy Mel likes to say, is that Walt had this intuition way back then that we need to start with story. And if you start with story first, that informs those strategic and design decisions. And so that's a principle that we've found out that works on anything literally that you're designing.
Mm.
That's why uh, a tattoo company would come to us. We've had recently we did a project for a title and escrow company, which in the US is a place where you go to sign the closing paperwork on your house. And the head of that, the CEO of that, realized he was a fan of Walt Disney, and he realized if we could create an experience out of closing on your house, then if all things are equal, you're going to choose us over the other guy, right? And so
Yeah.
we designed their brand, we redesigned their website, we thought through what that experience looked like on a narrative basis. They had a new building, we helped design that. Right down to the conference room where you'll sign the paperwork with, and your parting gift that you'll get. So that principle of story applies to
Mm.
anything, and it's a brilliant moneymaker. I mean, Walt realized that, and the brilliance of Disney is that combination of left brain and right brain. It's the creativity of Walt, and it's the business savvy of Roy. It's the storytelling, but then it's also what Disney calls synergy. It's taking that one story. When Cinderella comes out, where are all the places that we can talk about Cinderella? And when they built the parks, that was one more place where they could talk about it in addition to television, merchandise, those
Mm.
those channels that they had at that time. And now it's even more expanded. But there's a diagram. I think a lot of people have seen it that circulates online.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible. It's from,
Yes, your listeners should Google that. I mean, this was,
yeah,
I think, drawn by Walt and his team in 1957 about we're going to
yeah,
have this one story, and it'll be sent in all these different directions. It's like this web, this network.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's essentially why I'm starting up Ever After Group, is that I want to bring that to organizations. So landing on a salient, compelling story, brand story, and then
Mm.
telling that everywhere, whether it's advertising, PR, experiences, mobile marketing, events, what have you. If you can find that story and tell it well and tell it appropriately for the medium, that's
Mm.
when organizations succeed. And so, yeah,
I
that's
think,
really the balance: is find the compelling story, do it with excellence, and you'll find places where you can earn revenue or spread the word that will then come back to revenue.
yeah, I think it's that second piece, right, of fandom, right, and kind of, if it's like it's turning that flywheel and kind of increasing the lifetime value of your customers by building that fandom and creating memorable moments that then drive future behavior. So I think that what you're talking about there, and given your background with sports as well, or kind of being part of that sports world as you were at Florida State. One thing that I'm super interested in, and I keep kind of seeing things pop up, and I'm trying to kind of consolidate them into a a really clear point of view, but I'm not there yet, so you have to bear with me. Is this idea of, I think there's such an opportunity in sports, and maybe not, maybe this is kind of already played out a little bit in the US, but particularly in the UK when it comes, if you look at kind of Premier League and things like that, because they've been so dominated, the revenues have been so dominated by TV rights in the past, that the kind of the stadium experience and the match day experience has just been, it hasn't had to be very good. and as a result, it's not very good, right, for the most part. But you've got all these multi-use stadiums being built now and all of these kind of incredible bits of infrastructure. And it just strikes me that there's a huge opportunity to turn that stadium experience, that and create that kind of, that sort of hot dog moment for that sort of lifetime of fandom, right? So people should visit these stadiums and it be like going to Disneyland. What's your take on that? What's your take on kind of taking something that is really just a purely short-termist in terms of like, right, want to just sell out as many tickets as we can and run this game day experience as cheaply as we can to maximize the profit that we take from that, to invest then in the team or whatever, turning that into an investment in fan building and an investment in driving the IP that's going to lead to, potentially you can extend that then to content, to kind of building fandom globally rather than just the people in the stadium. There's a
Yeah.
question in there somewhere.
Well, we're being brought in. Storyland is being brought in to work on stadiums because
Right.
stadiums are realizing that the at-home experience has gotten pretty nice when you look at the big screen TVs that we have and the sound and the ability to see replay and then make whatever snacks you want to make at home. Versus you can no longer draw someone in with just a cold aluminum bench anymore, right?
Mm,
And so even these college football stadiums that house 100,000 people, some of them are actually pulling back their capacity and adding luxury box experiences because the attendance is shrinking at these live experiences because the at home experience is so good. So we're being brought in to add amenities, add new ways to watch the game, new ways to have hospitality, so that going to the game isn't just watching the game, but there's a whole other experience involved with it. And so that's absolutely critical now because the temptation is just to stay home.
I think it's so interesting. And there's a thing I read from the CEO of Dun and Dusted as well, who was saying about we're sports documentaries are everywhere, but the sort of the big growth area seems to be around, they did like the Beyonce Bowl, the sort of extending the actual game day experience into shoulder content rather than the retelling of the story of a particular season or whatever that you get with these kind of follow docs that follow people around. But super interesting space. I just think sports is such a opportunity for level, like you say. There's been so much innovation and development in the at home experience with sports, which is going to continue, but it just seems like there's a mindset shift towards using the stadium as like the crucible of fandom rather than a purely extractive revenue extractive experience, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, I mean
um
the bar has been raised. If you go to a stadium now as a fan and you're herded into a cold bench to watch the game, you start thinking back to your recliner at home and to giant screen and so unless somehow you make that experience something special, there's not really a reason to come back. More and more stadium owners are realizing that, and they're bringing us in. In some cases, we're working on integrating shopping and dining and entertainment into the stadium so that it can be activated year round, so that even when there's not
yeah,
an event going on, it's still a hub, it's still a destination that you want to come to.
I could talk all day about that, but another time we can deep dive into that in more detail. So I wouldn't be able to get through this without asking about AI. um, it seems like it's set to have a profound impact on the entertainment industry, across the board, both good and bad in lots of instances. But live experiences feels like an area where the opportunity sort of outweighs the doom and gloom around threats to jobs and the threat to human connection of like AI generated content. Obviously, you can't do that to the same degree in live experiences. So, how are you thinking at Storyland and with in terms of your new venture about AI and integrating that into your own design process, but also as a sort of storytelling tool in its own right?
Yeah, like any medium in history, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. But in the case of AI, there are many more dangers, I think, to it. That the loss of jobs is concerned. Also, just the ripping off of intellectual property because they essentially it's crawling the internet for other people's ideas and consolidating them and turning them into something that's semi new, maybe. So that's
Mm,
the scary part of it. But I mean, it can be used for a lot of good. We already use it for the elimination of a lot of simple tasks, whether it's
mm,
creating objects like trees and people that go inside of a design space to proofreading. Those mundane tasks that we used to spend time on can be handled by an AI, which allows more time for critical thinking, for original thinking, for the things that we
mm,
do well as humans. And if you look at the way AI functions, obviously AI can beat the greatest chess master at chess, but still a human master of chess times an AI can beat an AI only. So I think
Mm,
AI needs to be used in combination with humanity to create something that's new. And so, I mean, you could see in themed entertainment the possibility of creating very highly tailored experiences that could
mm,
morph in some way to each guest. You know, that could be one application of it. So we're we're looking at new ways that we can use it. Obviously, where coding is involved, we've been able to employ AI to help us get further along in coding, et cetera. So
mm,
it's a great tool, but it has some dangers that we need to watch out for.
yeah. Yeah, it's hard to know where things will develop, but like I say, I'm happy to be building in the real world industries, if you like, because I think that's a slightly less scary place to be than in the digital realm.
For sure. And
Uh,
people I will continue to want that human contact. And there's nothing like getting together with a crowd of people and experiencing something together.
yeah, for sure, exactly. Um, so a couple of final questions. We're almost at time. How do you feel about guest expectations over time? You mentioned a little bit there about obviously the fact that the at home experience is driving expectations up. But how do you think across your career that those expectations have changed?
Yeah, I think the obviously with home entertainment getting better and better, it's harder to pull people out of their houses. Not only the game watching experience or the movie watching experience, but video games. And as VR expands, VR has proven to be a bit nichey, but if we get to a point where you don't have to put on the headsets and there be a way to experience it spatially within the home, whether it's glasses or what have you, uh, that's going to be a real competition for things outside the home. Um, so I think the guest expectations increasing. You can always counter it with story. You can always counter it with experiences that do bring people together. And I think people are always going to want to leave the house for things like that. And it doesn't have to always be uh, a, a a really high sort of technology solution. I was just at Walt Disney World last week, and my wife and I were able to get on a ship and sail out of Wendy's window over the London skyline on a ride that's been around since 1955. So I think it, if you start with story, then you just use whatever technology is apt for telling that story, and it doesn't necessarily have to be VR or anything that's
Yeah,
new. Sometimes the more tactile experiences are a nice, refreshing counter to the digital worlds that we all live in.
I love that. Yeah. So, story is the constant and everything else is just tools and devices to bring it to life. I think that's
That's right. I don't know. Have you ever read the book Creativity Inc.?
I haven't. No.
Well, that's a great one. So
I will do now.
yeah, that's written by Ed Catmull, who was the head of Walt Disney Animation and Pixar Animation, and before that, he was with Lucasfilm. So between
Right.
Lucasfilm, Pixar, and Disney, he was a leader in three of the most commercially successful creative ventures of the last century, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he had a quote in there where he was talking about the initial release of Toy Story, the first computer animated feature length film. And he said when the film came out, people talking about the technology was secondary. Even though it was
Mhm.
a milestone achievement, they talked about Buzz and Woody and their relationship and the story. And oh, by the way, yeah, it was a beautiful movie and it was well done. Computer animation, groundbreaking. In all the positive reviews, it was the story. So with
Mhm.
that, he says we always start with story first, and then the technology is secondary and only in service of telling that
Yeah,
story.
that's very, very good advice. Um, so speaking of advice, what advice would you give to someone just starting out in the industry?
Yeah, people kind of joke about this next generation coming out and expecting the corner office right away, and that's not always true. I mean, everybody I've worked with in this new generation is amazing, and this is a generation of go-getters. But the reality is we all have to start at the bottom. So I always advise young people coming out of college to just get that first job that's most adjacent to where you want to go, and then build from there. It's not always going to be the ideal. My first job actually was just going back to the place that I had interned the previous summer, and it was kind of a local ad agency that worked on the hospital and the bank. But what that experience allowed me to do was uh, to be able to do a little bit of everything, and then figure out within the ad agency business what role do I like the best. Which then,
Mm,
within 6 months, I was at that next place. And it gave me something on my resume to show that I had been doing something related in the industry. So that's
mm.
my advice: is just you're not always going to get the dream job right out of college. Get the thing that's closer to that, and then
I
step from there.
I think there's really something in that kind of broad-based experience as well. Again, we're thinking about AI and the impact that that's having. I firmly believe that the most effective users of AI are sort of generalists that have a bit of experience under their belt. The direction of travel over the last sort of 10, 15, maybe 20 years has been about specialization of roles. And particularly the world I come from, it's been incredibly specialized roles within a commercial organization, for example. So you do this, then someone else does this, then someone else does that. And I think seeking out that sort of broad-based experience of wearing lots of different hats, I think is super important in the world of AI, where you if you can connect dots across different things, then AI becomes an incredibly powerful tool. If you're a specialist, then you probably get quite frustrated by it.
Well, and
um,
a lot of people that have gone far in themed entertainment started out just working in attractions. Uh,
mm,
you know, Bob Weiss, who was president of Walt Disney Imagineering for a long time, started out at Disney selling balloons,
wow.
policing the streets during the parade to make sure people didn't go into the parade route. But
Yeah.
that sort of on the ground view of operations is actually very
Mm,
helpful when you get to designing rides and experiences. So a
yeah.
ton of people in Imagineering and spatial design started out by just working a basic job in the spaces.
Yeah, that's exactly the same as the previous episode. We had George Wood, who runs Lunar Entertainment, who produced kind of immersive experiences, IP-led immersive experiences. He said exactly the same things. Like, he always advises people, well, if people show initiative in kind of really pushing for a role, then always starts them out as like part of operations on one of the shows, and then kind of, the good people always mark themselves out as kind of people who are just curious and want to learn all aspects of the business. Good. Well, so Matt, thank you for this. It's been fantastic. My final question to everyone is, and you've actually already sort of answered this because you've already introduced me to Mel and said that he should come on the podcast. So, but who should I interview? And so if we do get to interview Mel, then what should I be asking him about?
Yeah, Mel and Ben, I would highly recommend. So Mel is our co-founder and chief creative officer, and yeah, long storied history in themed entertainment, starting with Disney and the California expansion. So he can give you, and he is just a historian of theme parks. So there are all kinds of things you could ask Mel. And then Ben has been our chief strategy officer for the last 5 years, and recently launched a new division of Storyland called Storyland Locations, and he's the CEO of that new entity. And Storyland Locations is all about pulling the comprehensive deal together to make an experience happen. Yeah, Ben has a great background, not only with Disney, but Merlin Entertainment. And will have a lot to say. And actually, Peter McGowan, the co-founder with Mel, Pete has a strong digital background, and he actually spun off another company from Storyland called Ozone, which is innovating in uh, character animation and
Okay.
creating Pixar level characters with a lot less labor and cost, and has a lot
Right.
of applications for themed entertainment as well. So Pete would be a good person to talk to. And then Joe Pine is the author of The Experience Economy. I don't know if you know
Yeah.
Joe, but he would be another
I'd
one.
say, funny you should say that. I have a tentative agreement from Joe to appear on the
Okay, great.
podcast
Yeah,
later in the series. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm really excited to interview Joe. But
And he has a new book coming out called The Transformation Economy, which
yeah,
we're a disciple of Joe's because when it comes to our vision of experiences that lift the spirit, we actually want to move people from a mere great experience to a transformation of some point,
yeah,
whether it's bringing families together like never before, or if it's the Tom Shoes model of buy one pair of shoes and give another away to someone. We love things that have more lasting value like that. And so
yeah,
I'm excited about this new book that's coming out. And Joe is a true guru in our industry, kind of has defined the experience economy as it exists today.
yeah. Well, literally coined the term, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, well, that's great. So yeah, I'm excited to hopefully have Joe on, like I say, later in the series. So, I mean, so remind everybody the name of your new venture, Matt.
Called Ever After Group. And
Ever After Group.
it obviously has a nod to Disney storytelling in the name, but
Yeah,
it's real essentially a branding and marketing firm. And it's all about finding the right story and using the power of storytelling to create forever connections with your audiences.
fantastic. Is there a website? You said, I think at the beginning before we went
There will
live that
be. I mean,
there's not one yet.
currently, I think I shared that I have been quietly doing this the last few months,
Yeah,
just calling friends to tell them that I'm doing this, and already have quite a bit of work. So that slowed down
right.
my
Yeah,
own
yeah, yeah.
brand and website process. But the web domain is everafter.group, and hopefully that will be up and running
Perfect.
soon.
I will put that in the description of the episode, and it'll be a few weeks probably before this comes out anyway. So hopefully by then maybe there'll be somewhere for people to go.
Yeah, that'll give me an incentive to get going.
Yeah,
Landed on
brilliant.
a logo as of yesterday, so I'm excited.
Well,
Yeah,
that's half the battle.
yeah.
Fab. All right, Matt. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
See ya.